What's your typical day like?
My day, every day?
Yeah.
Well, at the present time, I'm not doing that much. I just joined the program for exercise on Tuesdays and Fridays. And I'm more or less a shut-in. Other than that, I can't drive anymore. And but I enjoy life, and I'm just here living with the loss of my wife of 69 years, 8 months.
Wow.
13 days and 23 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
And we lived a good life. I'm from Louisville, Georgia. I was born and raised on a farm right outside that little town. And my family moved, my father and mother moved us to Briggs County, Georgia. That's where we stayed while he was farming until 1938. And we moved to Louisville because he wanted us to get a better education than he got. So we moved there and started the school at Jefferson County Training School. And that's where I graduated from high school.
At Jefferson County Training School?
Yes.
What were your parents doing?
Well, my father had a truck, I remember, that we used to go and in the summertime especially go and get cantaloupes and fruits, and he would sell them. And then he did other jobs in the city. My mother was a domestic. She worked for a family, and she made $3 a week. And I started working myself when I was 10 years old.
Well,
as a curb hopper. And that's when you take a tray and put it on the side of a car. And I served a booth also there. And I did that kind of work until I graduated from high school. And I was never out of a job, but it was all night work because we went to school.
Yeah.
We went to work for about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when we walked to work, and the man would bring us home about 1:30 in the morning after closing time. And then after he went out of business, we got jobs in the little city, my brother and I. I stayed home until I finished high school. Yeah, I lived in my mother and father's house until I finished high school, and I left and went to Tuskegee in 1946. I was 17 years old. I knew how to cut hair, so I got a job time. I got in school, and that's how I paid my tuition, cutting hair.
In the dorm or in a store? In the dorm or in the store? Where did you cut hair?
Oh, I got a job at a barber shop.
So you worked in a barber shop, and that was in Tuskegee.
That was in Tuskegee. Yes.
Can you tell me more about Tuskegee?
Tuskegee is a place that it's hard not to love it. The educational program was just fantastic. Booker T. Washington said, educate the heads as well as the mind. And he had trade schools and academic schools. And it was just a wonderful place. I enjoyed myself there. And I was very fortunate. That's where I met my wife. At Tuskegee.
What kind of classes did you take?
Well, I started majoring in chemistry, and I didn't have a lot of experience in my high school in chemistry, and I knew I had a heart condition, and my doctor sent me to Atlanta to Doctor's Hospital, and for them to examine me, and tell him something about my condition. Well, while I was laying on the table, they examined me, and then once one doctor listened to my heart, they started calling doctors down from other sections of the hospital to listen. And then they had what they call a sidebar, I guess you would call it that. They made a discussion about me, and I overheard a doctor say, a person in my condition could live at least 48 years. And that didn't bother me. It's something I just heard. But later on, I started getting affected from what he said. My vision of the future was closing in on me. And I was wondering why was I doing all that work at Tuskegee and wasn't going to be around to enjoy what I had done. So I went to my doctor in Tuskegee, Dr. Eugene Dibble. He was the head of the hospital, St. Andrews Hospital in Tuskegee. And he advised me to, after we talked and he examined me too, he advised me stay away from stress. Take a course that is not as stressful as chemistry. And he told me how, which I knew it was because of my experience in high school. Didn't have a lab. Well, I did sign and registered in tailoring. I become a tailor. I become a tailor, and I worked for a company there near the campus as a coat maker. That's what I was doing when I met my wife. Well, I still had this feeling about the future. And I met my wife, and our relationship sort of changed that feeling. She gave me hope, and I just felt different, you know. And so I met her tonight. I talked to her about 10 minutes, and I looked at her and I pointed my finger and I said, I'm going to marry you. I'm going to marry you. So didn't nobody believe that. She didn't and I didn't either. But the next night, I went back. And she was there taking psychiatry at the Veteran Hospital. The next night I went back. And I went back Tuesday, Wednesday, and then my mind told me I was doing too much. I was pushing the relationship too much. I may be in the way of somebody else. I may be blocking somebody. So I went over to the campus to shoot a game of pool. And I looked up and I saw a person coming, and I didn't pay that much attention. And then I looked up again, and it was her. And I just, I started praying. I was so happy to see her. But my little buddy up there in my head told me, said, straighten up your body language, straighten up your face. You don't want her coming here thinking that you breaking down because she's coming. So she came and we smiled, talked with each other, and I gave the pool game up, and we walked back across the street on what at Tuskegee called the block. That's where the stores are. And we talked there, and I put her in a cab and told the cab to send her back home. Well, in the meantime, I had some fabric left from me helping to make the garments for Miss Tuskegee and her group for homecoming. So I made her an outfit. I made her a straight skirt and a bolero. And when I laid that skirt and that bolero around her shoulders, she made my material look better and made my work look better. And I was just so happy. But I liked her, you know. And a couple of days later, she put that outfit on to go out. And as we were walking, I looked around. Heads was turning, the women head was turning, and somebody wrote back to Mississippi and said she came up here and the man is making her clothes. So I was happy about that. I was glad that men, and always during our lifetime, men admired her, and I appreciate that. Where some people may get jealous, so to say, but I appreciate, because and whenever I made her something, I wanted somebody to look and admire, and they did. And she made garments look very well.
So you continued to make clothing for her after that?
Oh yes, after we moved here, I still made clothes for her. Made clothes for her.
And what about the tailoring? Or did you continue
Well, my
that?
brother and I had a tailor shop down on Tuskeegee Avenue back in the 60s, but we didn't keep that but a few years. But my barber shop is located there, 1347 West Tuskeegee Avenue. In 1943, my aunt was here, and we came up to see her, my brother, my cousin, and myself. We came up and lived with her for the summer. And then next year, my mother and father came here, bought a house at 2210 North 17th Street. And I went to Ben Franklin School, and they were fighting. And I wasn't used to that, being in a small, coming from a small setting. And I told my mother and father I wouldn't be able to make it at Ben Franklin. So I wanted to go back home, and we went back home, my brother and I. And my father finally let our cousin have the house, and they came back home. So, and then when I went to my wife's graduation, I got locked up because the person that I was riding with hit a car from the rear, and I was on the back seat asleep, and it threw me down on the floor, and I sort of got locked down there. But then I wiggled and got out, and when I got out, I looked and I saw a state trooper, and I saw the people who had stopped. And when I tried to get out of the car was leaning because of the shoulder, narrow shoulder, because it was leaning a little bit. And when I made a step, I fell and went down on the bank bed. And I came back up, and the officer asked me, he said, have you been drinking? I said, no, sir. He said, well, you stand over here. And he asked my buddy, have you been drinking? He said, well, I had a couple of beers. And he said, well, you can go. So now I want to talk to the cop and let him know that I did have something to drink. And he said, I don't want to hear it. So he locked me up. And the next morning we got out, caught a bus, went on to Jackson, and when we got there and got settled, we went to the graduation. And when we went to the graduation, they were marching in. And when my wife saw me, she broke that line and came running to me. And I said to myself, I said, she must love me like I love her. And she ran and got in my arms, and I kissed her. And she said, I'm so glad you didn't get hurt. I said, baby, I'm so glad to see you. And she went and got back in line and in her spot. And we went to the graduation. And when we left there that next day, and I came back to Tuskegee, I was in my room, and my little mindset started saying, now, Tom, you know your mother does not like Mississippi. She's afraid of Mississippi because of what happened to her best friend's son in Mississippi. And she doesn't want you even messing with nobody from Mississippi. You need to go home and see your parents. And so I said, yeah, I do need to go home and see my parents, and I did. And when I got there, my brother and his wife was there visiting from Philadelphia. Now, I'm not sure whether my brother told my mother I had been locked up or not, but my name is T.S. That was my nickname. That's what she called me. And she just kept saying, T.S., why don't you go back to Philadelphia with Jimmy? Why don't you go back to Philadelphia with Jimmy? And she said it so much, and I said, okay, I don't have nothing to lose, so I will go back with him. So he took me out to Tuskegee to get the rest of my things. I went down and talked to my boss and told him what my plans were for the future, and came back home, and we packed and came to Philadelphia. We got here July the 12th of 1952. Shortly after we got here, I got a job in the barber shop right near where my brother lived. And I put in an application.
And that was on Susquehanna Avenue? Where was
the
that?
barber shop?
And where you lived when you first got
Oh,
here?
I lived 2509 College Wall. 2509 College Wall. And
Where is that?
huh?
Where is that? I don't know where that is.
That's right near Girard College.
Okay.
Well, I lived there, and then I got a job at the barber shop, and then some fella came to, I guess the barber supply man told him about me. The boss came down and I cut his hair in this shop, and he asked me to come work for him, and I did. So I worked for him. That's where I was working when I got married. But after we got in Philadelphia in July, August came, and I remembered that my wife's birthday was the same as mine. So I sent her a gift to Mississippi.
The
And
same day.
Same day,
August what?
August 18th.
Wow.
August 18th. We celebrated her birthday, and she passed 2 hours and 38 minutes later.
Oh
Wow.
my goodness.
And then she said in Chicago, my wife had gone there, and she was working at Cook County Hospital. So I don't know how we communicated really, but some way we communicated. And I went down to Bars Jewel and bought her a set of rings and a $48 round trip ticket on Sky Coach. Took a ring, gave it to her, and came back here. And shortly after she came to Philadelphia, after she consummated her resignation from Cook County, and we ended up at 13th and Arch on the second floor in the office of the Justice of Peace. And he said what he had to say, and we said, I do, what we had to say. And we caught a trolley north on 13th Street, and when we got to Girard Avenue, she got off the trolley. She got the trolley on Girard Avenue and went to my brother's place. I went on to work that same day. And shortly after I got there, it got out that Tom got married. Tom got married. And they saw me working, and they started ridiculing me right away. Tom got married and working on the day he got married. And that went on for years because of the connection that people had from one barbershop to another. So I finally got used to it. I learned how to answer their questions, and I had to answer the questions my way. And then a guy asked me one day, said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes, sir, you can." He said, "Somebody told me you went to work the same day you got married, and you go around talking about how nice you are to your wife. How do you do that? And then you give your wife the same Christmas card every year. What are you, a old cheapo?" He told me. I said, "No, sir, I'm not." And he said, "Well, how do you account for that?" And I said, "Well, sir, I'm not that good answering a lot of questions, but I'll answer this question the best way I can." I said, "I love love, and I write about love. And when I write on my wife's Christmas card, I write something that let her know I love her. And she accepts my writing. She likes what I write. And then I try to be nice to her because my father was very nice to my mother, and maybe some of that rubbed off on me. I'm not sure. But I do know that in Proverbs it says, a soft answer turn away wrath, and a harsh word stir up anger. And then in Ephesians 5 it says, husbands, love your wives as you do your own body. And I practice that. And in Colossians it says, husband, never be harsh to your wife. And I practice that also. And as far as me working, I tell when I tell this story, I bring it up to the date. And I say, as far as me working, I had to work because we needed money. Because we were going on a 69-year, 8 months, 13 days, and 23 minutes honeymoon. And that's the way I answered that question. And I just thank God we had a great life. I don't think I've ever been mad with my wife. And I've practiced those things on her by being nice to her. My wife was a registered nurse, and then we had 4 children, and she worked at Metropolitan Hospital, she worked at Hahnemann Hospital, she worked for the Red Cross, and she retired from the Board of Education. And she retired in '96, I believe it was. And then she worked for a charter school for about 6 years. And then she retired, and we found out she had leukemia. And she was taking medication for about 8 years, I believe it was. And the medicine just didn't work anymore. And I took care of her. I love her to the day. I love her. I miss her so much.
When did you do any traveling together, or did?
Well, we went to Georgia. We went to Acapulco. We went to Mississippi, and my daughter was an exchange student in England, and I couldn't go because when I was young, my brother, my cousin, and myself, we changed our name, and they couldn't find a birth certificate. So I couldn't go, but my wife went to England to visit my daughter while she was in school over there. But we had a lot of fun. We had fun outside. We lived outside. We had a lot of friends. And unfortunately, most of them are gone. But we had a lot of friends. After we left 2509 College Wall, we moved to 10th Street. That's where the barbershop was, where I was working. We stayed there on, from 52 to 57. And I lived in my boss's house. They had an apartment in the house. I lived in his house. And then in 57, I opened my own business. And that same year, well, first it was a barbershop over on 29th Street in that area. But I was going to buy that, but somebody came along and bought it before I could get it. So I decided to open a barbershop at 12th and Susquehanna. In 57, and after I wasn't able to buy the barbershop, I had the money to buy it with, but not quite enough. And when I say that, I was going to buy it. I said, well, we better try to get rid of this money because, it may leave some way. So I started looking in the paper for houses, and I saw this house in the paper. And I came up, and they had the house over there where you go in and look at it. And finally, the owner, the builder, put the house in another realtor's name. And I think I must have called back or something. But anyway, I got in touch with him, and I brought my wife up to look at the house, and she liked it. And they came in, and during that time they was putting paper on walls. It was, they put the paper on there. We moved in January 18th, 1957.
Okay. And what did you like about this neighborhood at that time?
Oh, this is the quietest neighborhood you'll find in the city. I just enjoy it. It's just so peaceful, this neighborhood, just so peaceful. And I enjoy it. I've enjoyed it ever since I've been here. And I live outside during the summer. That's where I sit. And I just enjoy it.
These were new homes when you moved in?
Yes, the bill, we got a good deal on it because the builder was still paying taxes, but then nobody wanted it, and they told me they didn't want it because of the snow you had to shovel. But I didn't mind that. I was young then. I'd shovel everybody's snow. Yeah,
What kind of changes have you seen in Germantown since you've been here?
In Germantown?
Yeah.
Now, I will be frank with you. I haven't seen a lot of negative changes. I haven't seen a lot of negative changes. If I speak to this area, it's better now than it was then. And it was good then. But it's better now. It's quieter.
The neighborhood.
The neighborhood. I just love this neighborhood.
But the shopping district has changed a lot.
Yeah, well, the shopping district
And
has changed. When just before we came, they say they had chauffeur-driven cars going to shop on Shelton Avenue. But then other stores came in, and their grade was a little lower than the ones that was there. So it changed some, yes.
so the neighborhood, has the neighborhood around here changed? I mean, I know the Penn Knox neighborhood has always been a small enclave.
Yes.
But around it, the homes have they changed? I mean, has that?
I'm gonna be frank with you. I really don't know.
Okay.
I really don't know. I don't know of. I guess you have incidents everywhere. Today's probably worse than it's been ever been, but I really don't know the details of things that have happened because the news only give out the reports of incidents.
Yeah, not the good news.
Yeah. My grandmother, my father's mother, lived with us. She and my cousin. She lived to be 96 years old, and she must have had Indian in her because she had that long hair. And she looked like she was Indian. That was my father's mother, and then I remember my cousins and my uncles. I remember all them. The families used to meet at church. They come from the country and they meet at church, and sometimes they have programs where they had food and had just mingle and had good relationships. Most of the people where I came from, my hometown when I moved there, it was 2,000 people. I think it's 2,300 there now. I think I saw that on there. But it went up to 28, and now I think it says 23. That's Louisville, Georgia. It's spelled the same as Louisville, Kentucky. It was once the capital of Georgia, and it has a slave market also. And I worked in that town until I left home. But most of the people around that area were working on the farms, and they don't have as many farms around there now, I don't think. So I don't know exactly what they're doing because I haven't been home in quite a while. Well, when we were living on the farm, you couldn't see your neighbor's house. So that's how far they was apart. And it just wasn't any neighbors. You just lived. You lived and you worked and you went to the cotton field, whatever it was planting, and you gathered that farm, and we, after everything was done, we could start the school. A lot of situations you had to finish farming before you could go to school. And we had a one-room school. Everywhere I went in the country, we had a one-room school. And that was it. And maybe 2 or 3 classes maybe in that one room. And that's the way the education program is. And then they only went to the 8th grade Now, if students then get a chance to come to this little town to go to school, they got married and had families, and they weren't going to college like they started after the Second World War.
What do you think Alma would say about life in Germantown?
Oh, she loved it. She loved it. She loved it. She loved Germantown. In the late 70s and early 80s, we spent a lot of time in Atlantic City. We enjoyed going down there. And
What did you do there?
well, before the casinos, you know, we just stayed and walked the boardwalk and, you know, and had fun doing that. And then when the casinos came, we started going into the casinos. And we had friends that had places down there in Atlantic City. And sometimes we go down and stay with them. Or we get a compo room. And I studied blackjack for about 15 months. And the first time I went there and played, I made $30, I remember that. And I studied, some friend of mine down the street gave me a class on a disc. And I studied it for about 15 months. And I played like that. I played just what it said, only now they exposed blackjack. At that time they didn't. And I played just like it said, and you had better odds like that. And I was very fortunate. See, a lot of times they give you comps because you play a long time. And I was able to play a long time, even if I didn't win that much, playing like I played.
Yeah, they say blackjack is the best chance in the casino. Your best chance on the betting is the blackjack.
Well, let me tell you this. I don't know too much about the other games and their odds, but for me, blackjack is blackjack. And then I have to, and it teaches you how to observe whether the people that's playing know how to play. It teaches you that too by learning the game. And I played, and in playing, the dealers beat me 5 times straight. and it's amazing that what happened, that can happen right in the casino, because if you play it the way they play it in the casino, you learn everything that they do to you. And if you keep playing, you'll get broke. That's one thing. That's one thing people don't know. And then there's an addiction to it also.
Yeah. So you knew when to stop.
That's one of the key to it. You got to think. When people are saying you're there to have fun, you got to think what it means.
What about Alma? Did she play too, or
She played the slots. She played the slots. She played the slots. She used to win. She used to win good.
And what about your children? What are they doing?
Who?
Your children.
Oh, well, my daughter, after she finished college, she told me, she said, Daddy, she always loved hair. And she said, Daddy, I want to go to beauty school. Because she went down, a friend of ours had a shop down at 22nd and Chestnut, and she was working at that big company. Well, I can't think of that, was a clothing company. But she was working there, and they went out of business, and this girl worked there too. And she went down there to be the receptionist. And she said, Dad, I want to go to beauty school. So she went to beauty school, and now she's a beautician. But she did marketing for Neiman Marcus. Neiman Marcus, that's what it was. She was a buyer for them. but then she loved hair, and that's what she does now. And she's married to a nice young man who is our pastor. He wasn't a minister I don't think he was a minister when they got married, but his father was the pastor of the church, and he became the minister a few years ago. And they have two wonderful children. And we kept them right here in the house when they were babies.
What about the rest of them? Tell me about the rest of them.
They're in Harrisburg. I have a son in Harrisburg and a daughter in Harrisburg. Yeah.
Do they have children?
Oh my God, my son has. Oh well, he has a lot of grandchildren. He has 3 children, but he has a lot of grandchildren, and from one of his granddaughters, one of our granddaughters, we have 2 great grandchildren.
Wow.
And that's from my son's family. I think children should be taught early about what to expect in the future, what's out there. Plus the fact they need to be advised about certain things, and families need to show more love towards their children, and no beating of children. If a child has a problem, and I experienced this on my grandson, and not my children, but I experienced this on my grandson. If something happened, you sit down and talk about it. And you got to sit down and talk about it, and he has to feel that he's not being rushed. And he has to feel free to express himself. And that's the way I treated my grandson when he came here to stay with us as a baby. But children have to be taught as youngsters, because we have too many children dropping out of school. And
what are the things you think that are most important? You said that you need to teach them. What are the things that are important?
well, you got to teach children. You got to teach children this, number one. If you believe in the Bible, you got to teach children not to have children out of wedlock. If you believe in the Bible. Now, people believe in the Bible, but they don't really teach that. I think that's number one, because up to me, the strength of the family is some of the strongest strength that's on earth. The strength of a family. Because of this, you have too many young men with too many families. Family here, family there. And at one time, and especially in my hometown, if a girl got pregnant, you had to marry her. And that child would take the name of her father. But now, they don't worry about people getting married, and they don't really worry as much about people or the fathers paying child support. So they give the family a check. And sometimes daughters do the same thing mothers do. But mothers must teach their children not to make the same mistake. It's all right to let your child know you made mistakes. I told my children some things when I made mistakes. But you got to teach children that don't do what I did because I made a mistake. Do what is better for you, and that's to get married and have a family. Not just have children and no man around. Because they say 71% of the children the black children born in Philadelphia are born out of wedlock. And that's not good.
I didn't realize it was that high.
Huh?
I didn't realize it was that high.
But I
That's-
saw one time 76%.
Wow.
I had the opportunity back in the 70s to work for Temple in a comprehensive health services program. And we had about 4,500 families in Tioga that we served. And all of them was, well, female was the head of the household. And one of the terrible things about it, if a male came in, even if he was the father, his name would go on the bottom of the list. And the check would come, his check would come in his wife's check. So he was never the real head of the household. And that's not good.
And so you told me about your oldest, the second one, and the youngest. You told me about the oldest and the second one and the youngest. Did you tell me about the third one?
The third son?
It was the
You mean
child.
the third child?
Child, yeah. You told me about the first.
Oh, well, my
second.
third son, unfortunately, he's incarcerated. And you know, if you study the projects, they were not good for people. They built the projects and they put people in them without any security. And when they did that, everything started happening. And unfortunately, my son got tied up with the projects down the street. And I'm not faulting the projects now. I rather fault myself because I knew what was happening, and there was other reasons I didn't do anything about it. And he got in trouble down there, and he's incarcerated.
How long is he going to be serving?
How long? Oh God, it's been a good 40 years.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a smart. He was one of my smartest child, and well, it's been longer than 40 years because it was shortly after my youngest daughter was born, and she's 55.
So he was not married.
Oh no, he was just a kid. He was just a kid, and he got in trouble. And some of the things that I didn't do hurt him, you know, and you know, sometimes you don't know what to do, so you don't do nothing, and I have better knowledge now about children than I did then.
Is that something you would like to talk about, or something you would not like to talk about?
Oh, I'd love to talk about it.
Well, tell me about it.
What you mean about?
What you're saying that you feel responsible, or what your son did.
My son, he was charged with murder. He was charged with murder, and you know, he went down there. He wanted to be one of the big guys, you know. Didn't know nothing about what was going on, and they used him because he wanted to be the big guy, so you be the big guy, you know, and he got in trouble. He was found guilty. The attorney and the district attorney and the judge threw the gun out, and he's still fighting that. He threw the gun out. It wasn't the gun that they say was used, but he was found guilty, and he got life in prison.
Well, do you think he was guilty? Was he guilty? I mean, where do you take responsibility for this?
Well, say it again.
Why would you feel taking responsibility for this?
Well, here's the point. Not up until what he did. It's just like a child is doing something at 3 that's not right, and you don't correct it, and it gets worse. It escalates. Okay. When my baby was born, my baby daughter was born. I took up time with her, and before then, he was with me all the time. He used to ride in the back in the window of my car. You know, we had a lot of fun together. We went everywhere together. And then when my daughter came along, I had to take up time with her. And I knew there was some offense to that. And I didn't really do anything about it. Now, just like with my grandson, when his sister was coming along, I told him, I said, I don't care what happened, I don't care who come, you are number one. You're number one. And at first, he had a little problem. I noticed that. But then he learned to love his sister. So it was my fault not to blend my son in with his sister like I should have. And you know, when you get where you don't care what happens, you do the wrong thing. And that's what he did. You know, he was smart. He was very smart. But he wouldn't do his work in school, and he wanted to be a big guy in school. And my daughter was going to nursery school on Shelton Avenue, and he went to Pickett's. And he would come and pick her up on time every day and bring her home. But then they tell me he'd be up there with his shirt off, you know, with his chest out. Didn't have no chest. Just like, you know, just not doing the right thing. And they transferred him to another school, and he just...
Was he getting into fights? I mean, was it getting into fights, or was he getting into fights, or just?
Oh no, he wasn't getting into fights. He was just wasn't doing what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. And he just started doing the wrong thing. And when you start going wrong and don't nobody turn you around, you don't know when to stop. And that's the way he was. But I still feel that if I had known, I should have done certain things. I should have, you know, when I first saw it, and I saw it early because people would tell me things he was doing. But you know, when a child come home, you know, you came home on time, it's all right. But it's not all right. You need to sit and talk. Yeah.
And so how's he doing?
He's doing fine. I tell you what, it's amazing. His money ran out on the phone system, and I've been trying to get money in it, and I'm having a problem. When he called, they let him call, but they didn't let him call lately. But he called, and he had like 30 seconds. And they say, you don't have enough money for this call. What is the code number? And I couldn't remember the code number. And the last time he called, I just used the barbershop address, and that was the number. But he didn't have but 30 seconds, and they cut it off. And when they cut it off, they cut me off from you know, going into the system to put money in. And I won't be able to do anything out of it. I call the city, I call the state, I call that eBay. eBay told me they didn't cover the prisons where he is, that area. And I can't do anything, and I tell you the truth, I had his attorney's number, and I can't find that. So we just have to shuffle it out until he is able to call me. I don't know what to do as far as that is concerned. But he's smart. He's still smart, you know. And you know, if you don't do the right thing, you get.
Yeah. Do you have hope in the future?
Well, listen. My grandson told me when he was about 3 years old, he said, "Papa, you're going to live to be 100." He was about 3 or 4 years old. So, you know, I'm 94, so I told him yesterday, he came and sat with me a long time yesterday. And I told him yesterday, I said, if you got an X-ray, I'd take that. But,
If you have an X-ray? What, if you had a what?
extra years. He gave
Oh,
me
oh, oh,
100.
Extra years.
Extra years, yes, yes.
But we had fun on that. But, well, I just hope our young people will have a chance in life because there's so much going on today. A child can lay on his pillow, on his sheet and gamble on his telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And just my opinion, it's just the devil at work. You know, a child shouldn't have that opportunity. In fact, really, nobody should have it. But since the state is making money and people are making money off it, it's about money. And I just hope that our young people will stay in school, and I hope our young parents will understand their responsibility as far as parents is concerned. Because too many of our young people are going to prison. And they got to understand that prison is a business, and every business needs customers. And so we need to just be sincere about the future of our children. That's important, because that's the foundation. I'm just so glad I had wonderful parents. They didn't make a lot of money, but they were good parents. My mother and father, and I wasn't that good myself. I was a bad little guy, but I worked, and I stayed in school, and I worked the last night I went to school. I worked on the 27th of May, 1946. I worked from 10 to 6 in the morning. I went to school. I said my valedictorian speech. I left and went home, and I never went back to live.
So you were the valedictorian?
Yes, I was the valedictorian of my class. And, I had high hopes, but my wife rescued me from hospice and to what I call hospice today. And she gave me everything, brightened my life up, and lowered and raised the ceiling. The ceiling was low. The vision of the future was low, was short, and she gave me hope and inspiration. And that's not the reason I loved her, but I love her for that. Yeah.
Two.
She was a wonderful person. Yeah. She was a wonderful person. And I miss her so much, I tell you. Yeah, I miss her. And I don't know why I call her my babies, that 92-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my baby. And we had a great life, great life. And I tell you one thing: if you don't raise your voice too much, I know one time she told me, she said, "Well, I can't bother with the others, but I can straighten you out." So we had a lot of fun together, and I always tried to practice things that made us happy, and because I guess I got that inspiration from my father, because he was nice to my mother. He loved my mother, and I loved my wife. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we always said it's better to forgive than overkill, act or react. And we lived on those principles. And it's best to love, and best to treat your children with love, even when they do wrong. Treat them with love, because how you gonna get rid of them? You can. Because one day you're going to need them, like I need my children today. And I'm so glad we have a good relationship.
You want to give a final message to your children that they're going to see all this as part of their history?
Huh?
A final message for your children?
Oh.
And grandchildren?
Yeah, I want all of my children and grandchildren to remember their grandmother. That's one thing I want. And I want them to learn to love each other and do the right thing, because that is the best thing that you can do, and be honest and be fair. And if you do that, God will bless you. Because He blessed me, because I try to be fair, and God just keep peace in my mind, regardless to the trials and tribulations. So that is to you. I read a book in 1948 written by Charles Chapman. He was the former editor of the New York Evening World. And he claimed to be that he was the first editor to hire a female reporter. But unfortunately, he had a bad life at the end. He went to prison. But some young man from New York brought the book from the New York Rare Bookstore to Tuskegee, and I got a chance to read it. And this is what I said on the program to my wife. And it's his writing, really. I'm paraphrasing it. The sweetest flower that blows, I give to you as we part. For me, it's only a rose, but for you, it's my heart. I love you, baby. And you know, we were talking about 3 o'clock one morning, and you said, I'm so glad I met you. And I said, I'm so glad I met you too. And I was just thinking that something that I didn't want to tell her because I didn't know whether it would be the right thing to do. And that was, if I knew she could get well, I would take her place in a heartbeat, because I love her. But I lost something. Oh, look what I lost. But I asked God to give me the moral, the mental, the physical, the intellectual, and spiritual strength to live without what I lost. Now, baby, remember, I love you. I love you purely, truly, sincerely, and unselfishly. And now God has chosen that I shall love you after death. And I never will forget what Jackie Wilson said when he said, your love lifted me higher. And now, darling, I know God has put you in a position to rest in peace. Peace. That's it.
Good.
Very beautiful. Beautiful love.
Yeah. That was my baby. I didn't put that in. You got it all. That I don't like no.
So that was, you wrote that, or you just spoke that now?
Huh?
Did you write that, or did you just speak that now?
I just spoke that.
Okay.
Well, my daughter told me, I said, how much time I have? She said, not much. So I had to cut things. I had to shorten up what I wanted to say. But this is just something I remembered, you know. This is.
Somewhere?
I have the things jotted down, you know. I got everything to write a book, and I was trying to It's on my computer now. Somebody to help me because see, I didn't know this. I was going to be affected as much about my wife's death. But, you know, the Bible say, leave your mother and father and cleave into your wife. And we cleaved so close when she passed. I didn't know I was going to be affected as much, but I'm really affected by it. I'm really affected. I have sad moments, and I just pray a lot.
And it's good you have your daughter around. It's good that you have your daughter around to
Yeah,
come
my
see
daughter
you.
and her husband,
Yeah.
children come, and my son's children, they're coming up today. Yeah. But you know the amazing thing, I got a card the last time I saw the mileage on it. It was 9,857 miles. This was 2016, and I don't have any license, so I can't go nowhere unless somebody take me. Yeah, I'm just shut in.
Well, but in the summer you have your yard too. In the summer, in the nicer weather, you've got your outdoors.
Oh yeah, outside. I love outside. I was born out in the country, and I loved outside. I loved outside. That's why I developed that outside after I came here. I dug up 5 dump trucks, load dump trucks of dirt.
Well.
Yeah, and put that out there. And I love outside. I feed the birds, the squirrels. The squirrels come on their own. The cats come, so I have fun like I did when I lived in the country.